Well, welcome everyone. This is the Wealthy Speaker University podcast series. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson, author of The Wealthy Speaker 2.0. Today, we're talking to Kent Julian about how to go from free to fee and develop niche markets to catapult your business. Now, here's a quick bio on Kent. Kent Julian is a highly sought-after speaker and trainer who annually presents in 40 to 50 venues to 40 to 50,000 high achievers on topics such as success strategies for direct sales professionals, unleashing high potential leaders, and direction determines destiny. Through live events, online training and coaching programs, Kent inspires, equips students pursuing business careers, direct sales professionals, and home-based business owners with the mindset and skills to show up and shine in their life and business. Welcome, Kent.
Hey, it's great to be here. It's good to see you again, too.
We actually have, for the recording purposes, we're actually communicating on Skype, and I can see what's going on at you all at home will just be able to listen, but I can see what's going on over in Kent's studio here, and we're going to talk about what's going on with all this equipment you have around you. I'm kind of excited to talk to you about that. But let's talk about your past 3 years. You kind of have gone into the business and really tell us a little bit about your background as a pastor and kind of where you are today. Just kind of give us the lay of the land.
Okay, real quick, I'll do it in a 10,000 foot view. I used to be a youth pastor, and 7 years ago launched into my own business and added speaking to that. And I started really working on speaking probably about 6 years ago. And as new speakers, you kind of struggle figuring out where to go. I landed in the education market originally, did well in that. Speaking to educators, and through that found a market, a real niche market called Career and Technology Student Organizations. So if you've ever heard of Future Business Leaders of America, 4-H, Future Farmers of America, those are career and technology student organizations. And so really focused my marketing on that, and went from within about a 5-year period, went from free to a pretty full calendar. It's really exploded over the last 3 years, and most of it is because of niching. And doing that again, I love that market. I'm going to stay in that market, but I do want to do an adult market, a business market. And so during the last 2 years, done a lot of studying, went through some coaching with multiple people, including you, and really thought about, you did a great job, and really thought about what kind of industry I should get into in a more of a business or adult market, and really landed on direct sales and niched that down to a specific, at least to launch a specific direct sales company. And I'm going full force in that, and we're just at the beginning stages of that, but I'm really excited about what the future holds for that part of my business as well.
Awesome. Well, just for our listeners at home, our umbrella, our business model, at the top of yours, you would have a very specific, what would you say the word is? You're talking mindset and skills to show up and shine. What do you drill that down to?
When you're talking about the big umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
it depends on what market I'm in. So with the Career and Technology Student Organization, I'm doing a lot of motivational stuff, but it's basically I'm focusing on how to lead and live a successful life. They really, really want that in that market. I'm still figuring out exactly what that's going to be in direct sales, but it is some of the same type of things. One of the reasons I picked that is in that industry, there's actually some similarities between what I do in the Career and Technology Student Organizations and direct sales. What's interesting about Career and Technology, it has that and technology in there, and I don't know why that's in there,
Right.
to be honest with you. I think that's just something from a long time ago. The basic thing to think about with these students, they're high school and college students, is that they are very focused on going somewhere. So you're not going in and talking about anti-bullying or those kind of things. You're really talking about how to get the most out of life, how to become successful in business and in in your career. So they're very driven, highly motivated leaders. And you're doing the exact same thing with the direct salespeople.
Yeah, I would say that, helping people up their game is kind of, and show up and shine is a good reference to that. That's kind of become your brand and your promise statement, helping people show up and shine in their business and life. So I think that is a nice. Okay, so that's, let's say show up and shine or mindset or upping their game was at the top of your umbrella. What would you lay out your revenue streams for us? Where do you see all of this kind of coming down?
Okay, so again, in career and technology student organizations, it's very, very clear how the revenue stream is because I've been doing it now for a while. Okay. I get a lot from keynoting, so getting speakers' fees. You get a great opportunity to do back of the room sales. Mm-hmm. So I have packages that I sell. It's a book, a T-shirt, and a wristband. And I sell a ton back of the room. Okay. So it's one of the cool things in that market. It's not the highest paying market by any means, but you can make a lot on product. And the key for me that I have found is my product ties so much into my keynote that people want to take that keynote home with them. They want to take the message home. So I've really done well with that. And then you also have some training pieces as well that you can do.
Okay. What would you say is your kind of product that you developed, maybe the wristband or something like that you think, really? That's just flying off the shelf. Like, what has been the thing that surprised you the most?
Here's the thing. I'm really big on this. I didn't write my book until I knew what market I was going to be in and I had experience in that market. So my book's really good. Mm-hmm. But then what's really been key is I have a T-shirt and a wristband. So again, these are high school students, college students, mm-hmm. and educators. Mm-hmm. Those things really fly off, and I sell them in a package, and those things go like crazy because they're so tied. So I tell this, one of my key stories is about a kid who jumps off a diving board. I was a swim coach. So long story short, he didn't want to do it when he hated, he had a phrase. I use the phrase all the way through the story. My name's Sean. I'm 4 years old. I hate wah-wah. Finally, when I got him to jump off the diving board, he came up out of the water and he screams at the top of his lungs, I love wah-wah. He just went nuts. And man, when I tell that story, it just explodes. Just people love that story. So at the end, the T-shirt is a T-shirt that says, I heart wah-wah. So I actually hold up the T-shirt as the last thing as part of my package. And by the way, if you want to call it a pitch, I call it an offer. Okay. My offer goes all of 60 seconds because it's so tied to my presentation. I don't have to sit up there and pitch. I just say, here's what I have to offer. When I hold up that T-shirt, every single time the audience goes, and starts applauding for my T-shirt. So when you hear that, you're really, really excited. Okay, so that sells, and the wristband does too, because it's a huge part of my message.
I love Wawa? Does the wristband?
No, the wristband's a totally different thing. It's called E+R=O. It's a chat. It's something I read about from in Jack Canfield's book. It's something that was really meaningful to me. Okay. And I tell a story about my daughter and type 1 diabetes, and it just so ties in. And they're pieces that people say, I want to remember this, and they also empower them to take the actions that I'm challenging them to take in the keynote.
Okay, well,
so that stuff really flies off the shelf.
Genius. In the Epic keynote, I talk about whether or not you have a phrase that pays and whether or not it passes what I would call the T-shirt test. Well, ta-da!
That's awesome. Yeah.
I would say
I read that book. I read your book, and I don't remember the T-shirt phrase.
Well,
I need to go back and look at that.
I don't even know if I wrote it in the book, but I've always talked about the phrase that pays, passing the T-shirt test. You want it to look good on a T-shirt. You want it to look good on a coffee mug. And so you tee it up, you share with them what it means, and then there's a real story and kind of mindset that you wrap around I love Wawa, and then people are like, yeah, let me go and get that. And so that's my goal for corporate, is that people will walk into a place and see posters and door knockers and screensavers with their message on it. And so that comes back to what you're talking about. And I love, so people cheer when you hold it up. That's amazing.
It is. That is the greatest feeling, because you know you're going to sell a ton, but you also know that your message has really impacted their lives. So to boil down the message that I'm sharing, it's all about how do you take steps towards success, and how do you take 100% responsibility for your life? That's what it is. And that's just a major, major thing in my market.
It's fantastic. Okay, so we've got keynotes as revenue streams. We've got back of room. And, I think some people might think, well, I don't want to go down the education market path because there's not enough money in it. And so I hope that they're hearing what you're saying, that, membership sites, and there's all kinds of ways to get around that initial fee to build your umbrella, to build your empire, right?
Yeah, and if I wanted to go deeper into that market, you can do all kinds of things. There are people, there's some guys that I have and gals that I have a lot of respect for that have ongoing mastermind things or coaching sessions or webinars that they do. But that's one of the reasons I'm going into direct sales. And in direct sales, I've done my investigation. There's keynoting. You get, the fee is significantly better than what I'm in now. Mm-hmm. It's not as high as corporate, right. But it's significantly better. But the key is, I speak their language. I've been in home-based business here for a long time. And the other thing is, they're very open to backroom sales. And in backroom sales, there can not only be product, but it can be a 3-month coaching and mastermind program. And that's stuff that I've been doing on a whole nother side of my business for years that I've started to shut down. I started in my business as a career coach, so I'm real familiar with how to do that and really enjoy that. And I'm just going to plow that right over into working directly with direct sales businesses.
Fantastic. And Kent, I don't know if you remember this, but I have witnessed direct sales events with 15,000 people in the stadium, and them lining up for 2 and 3 hours afterwards to get your autograph and things like that, and selling, just tens of thousands of dollars worth of products. So I do know that is indeed possible. And so I'm excited for you. So let's talk about.
I'm excited.
Good. And it's been a long journey. Well, let's go there just for a second. You've studied this for 18 months to get ready to step into this market. So you really understand. Tell us what some of that was. Some of that research.
Well, it all started. It all started actually when the career and technology student organization market got to the place. I had always thought this. Because of my past as a youth pastor, I love working with young people. I knew it wasn't going to pay a ton, but again, you do well. It's not, you can do well. So I knew what I wanted to do in that and how I wanted to be. And so once that was kind of on autopilot, you just keep marketing your stuff, but you're out there, as you like to say, nothing gets you booked better than a great keynote. Mm-hmm. Somebody hears your speech, you just get a bunch of spin-off engagements. So about 3 years ago, I was right there where that was beginning to happen. And boy, the last 3 years, it's been great. It's just been automatic. So about 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, I said, I really want to niche again into an adult market that pays more, but not only pays more, that, there's a lot of depth to what I speak about, so that I can even go deeper and serve more. That's when I got into one of your coaching and mastermind things. And my whole thing was to figure out, what should I go after? If I could figure out that one thing. And to be honest, in that coaching and mastermind, what that helped me more than anything is to figure out what not to go towards. Because I had certain ideas in my mind what I wanted to go towards, especially corporate. And it just helped me figure out, no, that's not a good fit. That's not a good fit. That's not a good fit. And I stumbled upon direct sales in a conversation with somebody at a conference, specifically somebody who was in Mary Kay. And I was like, well, why would they listen to me? I'm a male. And that would actually give me a competitive advantage in that market compared to the market I'm in now. I have all the competitive advantage. Everything goes against me as far as being a guy, and I'm a little bit older. So I thought, oh, that's cool. So what I did is I didn't want to just jump into it. So I have this saying that says fast is slow and slow is fast. And what I mean is, if you're really committed to something, if you slow down and investigate it and make sure it's a good step, then if you slow down, then you'll know what you're doing, and then that slowness becomes fast speed. So it's not an excuse to not make a decision. It's just slow down enough to make sure you're making the right decision. Mm-hmm. So I actually spent a whole year doing what I call reverse interviews, where I would sit down with people in direct sales, high up in direct sales, for coffee and just ask them a lot of questions. I have gone to probably 10 or 12 different Mary Kay Monday night meetings just to learn the culture. And once I figured that out, I said, this is a great fit. And then I had to decide, how's the best way to get in to the industry. And I'm getting into it in a totally different way than I got into the career and technology student organizations, because it's a totally different market. So you really, by niching, you really, really learn. I try to answer the question, who hires speakers? What topics do they hire? How do they want to be communicated with? What's one of the best ways they want to be communicated with? And so my strategy has been built around answering those three questions. So I have slowed down. I've taken 18 months or so to think about it, but we're about ready to launch big, because I'm going to be vending at a gigantic conference where there's going to be 25,000 direct salespeople.
Fantastic.
So I'm so excited.
You're pumped. So this is why when I'm seeing you on Skype here, you have a setup all around you that looks like you have got your own radio show. And that's because, let's talk about that. You decided that based on that third question that you asked, tell us your three questions again.
I always ask, okay, who hires speakers? Who are the event planners or the decision makers? Who hires speakers?
Right.
And one of those questions is also how much do they pay? So that's kind of one question. The second question is, what topics do they hire? Like what are they interested in hiring? And then the third, which I don't think most people ask, is how do they want to be communicated with?
Yes.
So how do they want to be communicated with?
And what you learned was?
Well, let me compare it to the other one. The Career and Technology Student Organization is state advisors. They hire motivational topics and how to become the best person in career advice. And they do not want to they do not want you to call them. They do not read blogs. They do not read newsletters. They don't listen to podcasts. They want you to email them, period. That's it. Took me about 2 years to figure that out, but that's it. And once I figured that out, mail us stuff and email us stuff, but we don't even want to talk to you on the phone, kind of deal.
Wow.
Because they have so much on their plates. They're just running these huge organizations and basically are single person entities to run a state organization. Direct salespeople are very, very different. They love face-to-face. That's one of the reasons I'm going to be going to going to vend at a conference, be an exhibitor.
Right.
They definitely read blogs. They definitely listen to podcasts because they're so into motivation, personal development, professional development. They're going to be hanging out on Facebook like crazy, on Pinterest. All of those places is where they're going to be hanging out. So one of the things I decided to do, people have been saying for a number of years, oh, you should start a podcast. You'd be great at it. But it didn't fit my market. Why start a podcast if no one's listening? Well, the market I am going into, they will listen to podcasts. So we're launching a podcast. We should have it up by the end of the summer. We're launching a podcast called the Live It Forward Podcast with Julian. And it's going to be directly focused
Wow.
and marketed towards direct salespeople.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a screenshot of you, and we're going to put it up as the thing so people can see. Okay, so smile, click.
Smile.
Okay, there we go.
Don't listen. Don't mind all the mess in the background. I'll clean it up.
Oh, and here, of course, is one of the benefits. If you could see me, oh, you could probably can see me. I forgot to see what's going on in my little screen there. We're both in t-shirts, and this is the beauty of our business, right? This is why we do what we do. It's because we don't have to get suit and tie every day. Okay, so let's switch gears here and maybe hone in on some quick tips for speakers who want to go from free to fee.
Okay. A couple things is, well, you're great at communicating this. You need to look like you're going to get paid, that you should be getting paid. So you need a really good looking website. It can be very simple, but it needs to look good. That's key. So when people come find you, they know that. The other thing is, I think you need to just start, like for me, once I knew my keynote was good enough, even if I was going to do free stuff, I always started with, once I got into those conversations with people, asking them if they would like to take a look at my fee schedule, those kind of questions. So you actually have a fee schedule with 3 different packages. And you need to practice saying your fee. So if you're starting at $1,500 and you're going to start there, you need to be able to say it so that when you're having a conversation, you don't go, and they say, so what's your fee? You don't say something like $1,500.
$1,500.
Or you say it like a question. Yes, yeah. Like that, like a question. I've seen a lot of people do that. You just need to say it. So those are just some things that have helped me. And if I don't know if you want to ask, like if there's a specific thing, I might be able to answer that, like a specific, well, how did you do this?
Well, let's go back to your speech, because you said that there was kind of like a turning point. As a pastor, you were speaking all the time, but you obviously did something that kind of shifted your speech into overdrive. Do you know what that was? Can you identify that?
Yes, absolutely. One of the reasons I did not stay in youth ministry, because I was getting booked. Like if we want to just say, well, when did you start getting paid to speak? I was getting paid to speak and go to youth ministry conferences and be the keynote speaker at youth ministry conferences. What was interesting is it was because once I got to a big church, all of a sudden I had credibility, and so they didn't know if I was good. They just, hey, he's got to be good if he's there. And so I started getting hired for these conferences.
Okay.
What was really interesting was, it was a very strategic thing, because when I first started doing free stuff in a totally different market, so this is once I was out of being a pastor and I had my own business, I decided to do some free stuff here locally, and I was doing stuff for educators and I was doing stuff for high schools here locally. And it was a hit and miss of connecting with audiences. Some I really connected with, some I didn't. And so I really went to school and said, what is the problem? I used to connect all the time. And I figured out a couple things. One is the students I was speaking to in the past, they were used to listening to content. It didn't have to be near as entertaining, because they were used to sitting and listening, because that's kind of what they did in church. So if I went and I spoke at a big youth ministry conference, I would say it was 25% stories and illustrations and experiences, and 75% content. What I've done in my keynote is flip that, and which has been huge. And here's the other thing is, I teach this concept, or I speak on this, and I teach this to other speakers on the concept of anchors, that you don't tell illustrations. You don't make a point, teach on the point, and then illustrate the point. What you do is you use your stories, you use your experiences, your interactive experiences. You do those and you let them teach what you want to teach. and then you anchor the point to that. So it's almost as if you do that story and then you say, oh, by the way, what you just learned was this. So if you came and heard my keynote, it's a 45-minute to 60-minute keynote. It's extremely entertaining, lots of laughing, lots of emotion. We play a huge game of Simon Says. I mean, there's all these interactive experiences, but literally I'll do those things. I'll tell that Sean story. It takes about 10 minutes to tell that story. And then the teaching point I can make in 2 minutes afterwards, by basically just saying, this is what you just learned. And everything they learned about how to take a step and to step into their success was already explained in the story. So you don't have to reteach it. So once I did that, that was a major, major breakthrough because it's entertaining, it's inspiring, but it's also memorable. I say this a lot to speakers. If you have 3 points, when they're walking out the door, they don't remember. You're lucky if they remember 1 point, you know? And so if you can instead anchor those concepts, I'll run into students 2 years later that I saw at a conference, and they'll say, oh, hey, my name's Sean. I'm 4 years old. I love Wawa. They'll say that exact line to me. And I'll start laughing, and I go, okay, that's great, man. What did you learn about that? Oh, it's about that kid who jumped off the diving board. And what was the point? Well, we can overcome any of our fears if we just take a step. I go, boom, you got the point. And so I don't even worry about whether they get the specific point if they remember the anchor. So that was fantastic. A huge, I mean, once that happened, that's when I went, okay, now I can start charging for this.
So moving into the adult market, I know you've done lots of adult things already. Okay, so we're saying 75% stories, 25% content. Will that remain the same for the adult market?
Yeah, believe it or not, I do a lot of probably about 30% of what I do now is educators, speaking to educators in the career and technology student organization. And I would say it's probably not quite that much. And when I say anchors, it's not just stories, it's interactive experiences, it's all those. So it might go to 60-40.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and you can spend a little bit more time on content and you can go deeper with it. So I teach this concept called E plus R equals O, and with students I just teach the basic concept, but with adults I teach a whole concept of the 4 fence posts of personal responsibilities and how they expand and how they subtract. And it's a real visual thing, and it's content based, and I can do that with adults. I really couldn't do that with students. And it takes that to the next level. But basically, all of my key signature experiences and stories are going to translate. They've already translated into the adult world with educators, and it moves them and everything. I just kind of do them a little bit differently. And that is one of the reasons I picked direct sales versus corporate, because what the stories I'm good at and the signature stories fit that market better than they would a corporate market. And
so I suspect that when you go, you'll take what you do for educators, obviously customize it for direct sales, but I'm thinking the energy level is going to be amped up because those rooms are electric. It's amazing. I mean, it's really quite an energized. I mean, you're getting kind of a highly motivated audience to start with, so I think it'll be very.
It's my sweet spot.
Yeah.
Well, and if you came like this year, you said in my intro I speak to 40 to 50,000 people. Well, some of my audiences I did an FCCLA conference this year in Oklahoma, so it was just a statewide Oklahoma conference. It was 7,000. You know, so you've got, and it's an opening rally. They want the energy through the roof. Wow. And that's kind of my specialty. I just love doing that. Well, so I'm super jazzed.
So excited. Okay. So if we were to kind of go through all the things that you've done, where would you say your biggest return on investment has come from? Has it been, a product or some time that you spent doing a particular thing, where would you say your best time, money, and efforts have been spent?
I I love the marketing side of this business. So I love keynoting. I mean, it's my absolute favorite thing to do. But a close second is marketing my services, because to me, the way that I market is really looking at how can I serve with no strings attached. And if I can do that, I end up getting booked. They end up, taking a chance on me. And then again, my keynote sells it. So I always say, if you're going to be successful in this business, the 20% of your success is going to come from your content, what you speak on. Now, that's the most important 20%. You've got to nail that. So it's not like you can get on stage and do a 50% job on your keynote. You're not going to get hired. You've got to knock that out of the park. Mm-hmm. But it should take about 20% of your focus and your energy, and the other 80% should be on the business side of speaking. And for me, the business side is all marketing. How do you get out there and serve, no strings attached? Right now in the Career and Student Technology Organization, this is a huge thing that I've done, is I found out through talking, again, this is why you want a niche. I found out through talking to the people who hire speakers, at least 3 of them have said, I get 50 books a year from speakers. I just throw them away. And I thought, whoa, what? Wow. That's what I've been doing. So I thought, how can I do that differently? So last year, I sent them an email. Again, they want to be emailed. I sent them all an email, my entire list, about 700 organizations, and said, hey, here's the deal. I know speakers are sending you books all the time. I really want to invest in you. So I know you just went through election. All your state officers, these are high school students, all your state officers have been elected. I would love to send a personalized signed copy of my leadership book to all of them, no strings attached. I'm not looking for anything. All you have to do is tell me their names on this, go to my website, right to this page, tell me their names, and I'll sign them. I sent out 1,500 books last year. And this summer, we're doing it right now. I've been signing them all at night. We're up to like 550 right now. Now, the thing is that's the value to them is huge. The books to me cost $1 a piece. It's not a big deal, and it's just shipping them out. But that has been huge. That is a way to market and give them something of value. And the return is, boy, this guy really cares. And then they find out I'm great on stage. And then when I'm there, I don't just do the speech and walk to my room. I'm very invested in the conference, and all those different pieces really make me. 5 years ago, I was a no-name in this industry, and I would imagine I'm one of the top, I'm guessing, but I'm imagining I'm probably one of the top 10 booked speakers in the market now.
Wow. Okay, I just want to clarify something to make sure that our listeners understand it, and even for myself. So who was the person that said, I get 50 books a year and I just throw them away? And who were the people that you sent them to? Let's just make sure we get that clear.
Okay, that's a great clarifying question. The person who books speakers said, I get 50, and I'm sure it was hyperbole. It's probably 20, but speakers send me this is an adult who books speakers.
Right.
Sends me their book every year, right, to try to get me to book them. I throw them away.
Okay.
So what I did is I said, okay, who do those these are called state advisors, who do they work with more than anything? Every state organization has 5 to 10 state officers that get elected, and that's their student leadership team that they work with all year. And so how can I help them work better with those key student leaders? Give all of those leaders a book.
Okay.
And I mean, they have been so grateful. It has been the positive, if you want to call it karma, the positive vibes that come back this way have been so powerful, and it opens up all kinds of doors to speak.
We could call that karma marketing, Kent.
Yeah, there you go.
I like it. That could be your thing, because it's really what you're out there doing. I love it. All right.
Yeah.
So we have really been tapping into your brain for a lot, and I really hope that people have listen to what you're talking about the questions you're asking your niche markets to really get inside their heads and figure out, you're having all these conversations that are helping you really understand your market. So I hope that people at home will be doing that with their own markets, and I hope that this will encourage them to not try to be all things to all people. Let's talk about that for a second. Did you ever want to do more out there, and how did you know to come in and just really not be all things to all people?
Boy, that is a great question, and I think I figured that out early. I've invested a lot in going to conferences where they train speakers. I invested in going through training with you. I've invested in a lot of training, and I don't know. It's just one of those things where I really learned. I don't know why I learned it but I just picked up that message. I caught that message. I heard it over and over from everybody. The importance of niching, and so I just did it. Maybe one of the things is when I was getting out of youth ministry, I become so. So if you just think of youth ministry, it's like any other market. There's certain people that get hired to do keynotes. And you kind of get known for something. And so as I was moving out, I was getting booked to do training for youth pastors and volunteers on how do you work with your volunteer team. And I kind of became known for 5 or 7 years near the end of that part of my career in youth ministry as he's the guy to hire to talk about how to equip volunteers to work with high school students, how to equip adult volunteers. And so I got hired to do that all the time, and my name just became associated with that. So I think it was, I really became known for something. It would make sense to do the same thing in a market is niche down and become a big fish in a small pond. That's the way to really make money. I'm sure as you get bigger, like even as I go in direct sales, I'm focusing on one organization. I want to eventually do all of them, but it just, as I looked at all the list, I just thought I can't learn everybody's language. So why don't we just focus one? And then once that happens, they start telling other people in other organizations, because that's how I don't market at all to high schools, but I get asked, I'd probably do 10 high schools a year, all from spinoffs from them sitting in the audience hearing me.
Word of mouth. Word of mouth.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So aside from the lesson of, picking a lane, but also we're talking about going beyond picking a lane. We're really talking about picking a niche market and kind of drilling down and becoming the go-to person in that market, which I think is just such a terrific thing for people to do. What it does is when you get up in the morning, it gives you focus. I know who I'm going to be talking to today. I know who I'm going to be marketing to today. There's no question mark in your mind.
Yeah, and when I send out an email for every, let's say I send out 8 or 9 emails to my list a year,
okay,
maybe only twice do I even say, hey, would love to speak for you. There are always links back to a video I did on a concept that I know will help them with their state officers. Or, hey, I know you're having elections. Here's an article on 5 tips to run a great campaign that you can share with students. And so again, my marketing is serving. So they look at those things, and I see these things on their Facebook pages, on their, my articles are up on their front page of their websites, state websites. They're all over the place. And you can't do that if you don't niche, because you don't know what they need. So it took me 2 or 3 years to really learn, this is what they need, and this is when they need it. This is when they run their, where students are being elected to these offices. This is when they're kicking off their fall campaigns. I just know all that about my market because it's been niched so much.
Wow. So 8 or 9 emails a year in the world of almost weekly emails, which is kind of what's become true in many of our marketing efforts. Um, Give us the broad spectrum of how you would reach out and touch. So you just told us you're very specific, and maybe only one out of the nine would be an ask. So you're giving great value. What would there be anything else that you would do to keep in touch with those people, or is that just exactly the right amount for that market?
No, that's a great question. I send out a postcard, a big, it's like 6 by 11 promo piece. So instead of having a folding brochure, it's just a big 2-sided postcard that just keeps me in front of them. I send that out. We just sent that out, and timing's huge. So during the summer is when they're beginning to think about their conferences for the next year. So now is when they're hiring speakers for the next year. So I always send that out. I do the big book push. And then I always say I'm trying to stay in front of them every 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
So these people have not signed up for my email list because, again, in this market, they don't do that. They want you to email them directly. So I don't want to do it. I don't want to pester them. Just be in front of them every 30 days and give them something of value that they can use. They seem to really appreciate that.
Okay. Well, boy, knowing your market. Oh, this is just such a valuable lesson, I think, for our people listening in. Okay, final question. If you could give if you could give one or two pieces of advice for speakers who are just starting out, what would it be?
I'll give a couple. Yeah, that's a great question. One is, I always say, stick-to-itiveness is your greatest competitive advantage, because 9 out of 10 people who start won't be doing this 18 months from now. They just give up. Anything worth going after takes some time. So when it comes to speaking, the launch, before you really start getting paid, there's a lot of sweat equity you put in before you start getting paid. But once you figure things out, and if you stick with it long enough and you're always learning and you're always pivoting, what will happen is you'll come to a tipping point, and the first tipping point will go from free to fee. And then the next tipping point will go, man, I had to hustle just to get 5 engagements last year. And now this year, I've got 12 paid engagements, and it almost like it doubles every year. So that when you're in this for 3 to 5 years, you're beginning to be booked 40, 50 times a year pretty easily. So stick-to-itiveness, you just got to stick with it. And then number 2, I would get back to what we've been talking about the whole time, is niche. And you will not find your perfect niche first time out. Right. If you do, you're very fortunate. I started, you probably don't even know this about me. I started going into businesses, and I actually started doing some hospital conferences, some leadership stuff in hospital conferences, and found out real quick I did not like that.
Wow.
And then that's how I ended up getting into educators, and that one stuck. And I realized, hey, I kind of like this. I knew it wasn't where I was going to be long term, but I was gaining so much experience and getting paid. And that's how I stumbled on career and technology student organizations. None of these organizations were in my high school, so I didn't know they existed.
Right.
So it was my third niche. It was my third attempt at a niche that really planted for me. So stick-to-itiveness and keep niching and just kind of pivot along the way. Learn what – it's almost half the battle is learning what's not a good fit for you, and then really sprinting after those things that feel like a good fit.
Wow. I feel like everything you just said in the last minute, I want to tweet it all. It's such good, valuable, like you gave me about 7 different sound bites there. I may have to go back and pull them out and tweet them. Such great, rich material, motivational, Kent. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy day. I know your daughters are heading off to Nicaragua, and I'm hoping you said a big goodbye to them before they left, because we were doing this interview while they were departing your driveway. So I just want to say thank you so much. You've given our listeners so much great things to listen to, think about.
Awesome.
And that's it for us, everybody. I want to say thanks again to Kent, and we'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now.